Hi there, and welcome along to episode 115 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the free and independent Rangers podcast that is made by fans for fans. And as we say every week, guys, it's not just the podcast that is free and available to you all. We also have all of the great content over on the website at www.gersnet.co.uk, where there's match reviews, previews, a lot of articles, historical stuff, and a very, very friendly fans forum. So please do get involved in that as well. As always, if you're joining us live, we are live on Sunday evening. It's the 29th of November. It's just gone 9:30. Sorry, we're a couple of minutes late, but it's a bit of a faff setting up the live stream, and we're very good at it. But if you are joining us live, then you're very welcome. My name's Ross Bennett, and I will be your host this evening. I'll be keeping an eye on the comments on the YouTube stream, so if you have any questions, any comments, it is a bit of a beautiful Sunday for us all in the Rangers world, so please do let us know how you're feeling this evening after the trials and tribulations of the League Cup today. If you're not joining us live, please remember that the podcast is available for download every Monday morning, and that's available on iTunes, Google Play, Acast, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Please do hit the like and subscribe button, and you will never miss a thing. It's a jam-packed show this evening, but it's a jam-packed show every week, so that's no excuse. I've got two top caliber guests to join me this evening. We're very, very grateful to have them giving up their time this evening. First of all, it's Iain Duff. Iain, good evening. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Have you enjoyed watching the football today?
It's been not bad, hasn't it? Yeah, I think the word Schadenfreude comes to mind for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Are you talking about Liverpool? Are you talking about Chelsea Spurs, or is there another game that's kind of caught your eye today?
Just in general, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, we are a Rangers podcast. We are here to talk about Rangers and nothing else. But you do sort of take a wee bit of delight seeing the meltdown that's happening over the other end of the city. Have you seen the photos and the pictures that are coming from Parkhead at the moment?
Just bizarre, really, isn't it? I mean, you would think, how would they react if there was something really bad happening? How would they have got through the last 10 years that we've gone through? Just bonkers. But anyway,
yeah, that's the thing. I was just chatting off the air saying that all the stuff we've gone through in the last decade, I don't remember us ever rioting and throwing barriers at police vans and all the like, but a club like no other. Also joining us this evening, again, we're very, very lucky to have Stewart Weir. Stewart, good evening. How's your weekend been?
Good evening. Yes, a thoroughly enjoyable weekend. Usual arguments that you have any time it comes to putting Christmas decorations up whilst it's still November. I'm a traditionalist as far as that goes, simply because I like looking at things like snow and Christmas decorations, usually on Christmas cards only. So it's been a traumatic weekend, but not as traumatic as it has been for some people.
Who generally wins that argument, Stuart?
I have basically learned to concede over the years. I like a quiet and peaceful life, so therefore I give in quite easily.
Excellent. No, glad. I think that's, you've got to pick your battles, so I don't blame you there at all. Listen, gents, now we are a Rangers podcast. We're here to talk about Rangers and Rangers alone, but I think it is worth mentioning just kind of what's going on over in the east end of the city at the moment. Obviously, Celtic knocked out of the Scottish League Cup this afternoon. It's the first domestic cup that they've been knocked out of for 3 or 4 seasons now, and fair to say that their fans aren't taking it overly well at the moment. As at the time of recording this show, Neil Lennon is still the manager over there, but of course, if anything develops over the next hour or so, we will bring it to you as soon as we hear it. Stuart, you and I were just chatting off there just before we came live, and you thought that actually this might have repercussions for the wider Scottish football game in terms of getting fans back in the grounds. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would be utterly amazed if there isn't a knock-on effect from this, where football fans are always seen as being one and the same, regardless of whatever club they come from, or regardless of whether they're fans from the same club. It's very easy for some of the parliamentarians that we have just now to really tar everyone with the same brush, and they wait almost for any excuse to put football fans and football supporters under the cosh. Again, we're in a situation where none of us have lived through anything like this. There are certain restrictions.
We appear to have lost you, Stuart. Are you still with us? No, maybe not. Well, I'm sure it was a cracking point he was about to make. Iain, you're still with us, aren't you, or is it a problem at my end?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think you and I will have a bit of a chat until Stuart joins us again. We'll move on. We'll start talking about the Falkirk game this afternoon. Obviously, for anyone who's been avoiding the score, I'm afraid I'm about to spoil it for you. But Rangers progressed to the quarterfinals of the Scottish League Cup today, the Betfred Cup, putting 4 goals past Falkirk. A very confident and assured performance. Potential banana skin going away there, plastic pitch, seeing the shock result over at Celtic. So a very, very professional job, in my opinion, Iain, to get through. There was a lot of squad rotation and a lot of players dropping out and being replaced by maybe more players on the fringes of the squad. But it was still a very competent lineup. Were you surprised to see so many changes, or were you maybe surprised to see that there were still so many first choice important players, Borna Barisic, Tavernier, still quite a few of them making the starting 11 today?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit surprised that Tavernier and Barisic both started. I think probably if Bassey wasn't required in centre half, then he would have probably started ahead of Barisic today. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, we've got a big squad now, and we've got a pretty talented squad. And that first 11 that started today, you would have been pretty happy with that in most games, to be honest. And I think that sort of shows the strength and depth that the squad's got now. Because if this had been even last season, I think we'd have struggled to put out a team that that strong, making so many changes. So that in itself is a real positive. I mean, I thought the guys that came in, most of them did a fairly decent job. I thought most of them did what was asked of them, and as you say, it was a very professional job. I thought Falkirk actually, first half especially, I thought were causing more trouble, and offering more than most of the teams have played this season in the Premier League. So fair play to them, and maybe they're a bit unlucky that they were 3 behind in some ways at half time. But I thought overall that it was a strong, professional performance. All those factors you said. The pitch looks really difficult to play on. I thought the ball just seemed to be flying about on it, and that's never easy. And it was it's 5 o'clock on a Sunday night, not the best time for playing either. So yeah, overall, you got to be happy with the outcome.
It's funny. I completely agree with you, Iain, that watching that game, they did appear that they put up more of a fight than some of the Premier League teams that we've faced this season. And looking at Falkirk's squad, actually, there were so many names that we all recognised. There were Blair Alston and Morgaro Gomez and Connor Salmon, and sort of really established Scottish Premier League players who are now plying their trade down in Falkirk. So a very professional display indeed, and very relieving to go and take four goals and move on with minimal fuss and hopefully no injuries, other than Brandon Barker, who I think everyone's aware is far from my favourite player. A phenomenal sort of opening goal again from Jermaine Defoe, Iain. The last time that we saw Defoe playing, I think, was Livingston, when he scored last month's goal of the month, with that lovely ball over the top that he cushioned down and took first time. And he scored another goal that's not too dissimilar today. After that game, Iain, he said that he was angry, or Gerard mentioned that Defoe was angry at the lack of.
I'm back in case anybody's interested.
You're back, Stuart. What I was going to say is
I just finished my rant there, and it suddenly came back up. I realised I've been speaking to myself for the last 7 minutes.
I know the feeling.
I was thinking, is that your wife?
Anyway, sorry about that.
You've stolen your power so that she can power up all the Christmas decorations. But we're glad to have you back. I'll direct this question to you then, Stuart. Jermaine Defoe, last time he was playing was against Livingston, and after the game, Gerard mentioned that Defoe was angry at his lack of playing time. And we never really saw him after that for a good few weeks. He's come back in today. He's scored a wonderful goal and he's taken it very well. And I thought he played it well over the 90 minutes. Are we utilising Jermaine Defoe enough? He certainly gives us another dimension in attack.
He didn't play as if he was a man who had anger management issues, did he? He played like a guy who had a real bounce and a real skip in his step, and the goal that he took was just a fantastic finish. I mean, for me, the goal and how it arrived was reminiscent of 30 years ago when Terry Butcher with his left foot used to ping balls over the top, probably diagonally in the opposite direction, for Ali McCoys to run onto and hit right-footed back across the goals. It was almost like a mirror image of what you might have been watching 30 years ago. And, it was a fantastic finish. And the initial ball just looks, for many people, just looked like a punt, diagonal punt across field, looking roughly in the direction of Defoe. But it is placed, with precision where it actually lands and how Defoe can run onto it. And it also leaves the Falkirk defender, scrambling all over the place to such an extent that it falls over. Defoe's finish is majestic. Is he being utilised enough? I think he is probably and possibly getting as much game time as Steven Gerrard can afford him just now. I think Rangers have a wealth of riches in that position just now. And ultimately, not everybody, given the system that Rangers plays, not everybody can play all of the time. And I think Jermaine Defoe, given his age and given as well the demands on the Rangers squad, probably understands it more than anybody that this will be a squad game these days, and will probably be happy to get any kind of game time at all.
I mean, his return is certainly better than Cedric Itten. And yeah, Itten finds himself in the Europa League squad, whereas Jermaine Defoe doesn't. It's a comment here from Peaceful Warrior on YouTube, surprised that Defoe isn't in the Euro squad. And I think that's a fair comment. Do you think that Defoe, Stewart, can be aggrieved or disappointed that he's limited to such maybe the less meaningful games and he's not getting a taste of Europe?
I think if you look at you've got a squad of players and a group of players that you're trying to utilise across a number of matches. I think that what Rangers have with Morelos and Roof, if they're playing and playing well, is almost like for like. And I think you need two strikers like that. You don't need three. And I think that Aiton gives you a difference, given because he's his physical stature, he's a bigger guy, therefore he can play more direct through the middle, and he's also pretty good at holding the ball up in wider positions. Defoe can do that as well, but I think that the aerial menace that he might have might give him the edge over Defoe, given that you already have two players who are similar in that particular position.
Iain, let's stay on Cedric Itten then. He seems to be a solid, if maybe unspectacular, signing so far. I mean, his first goal away at Motherwell I thought was exquisite, and I think I'm right in saying that one goal of the month for September. But since then, his game time has been limited, and I thought whilst he had some nice moments today, he also had some frustrations. Are you happy with his contribution, and do you think maybe he might be frustrated at the lack of opportunity that he's seeing at the club?
Well, I'm sure he will be frustrated. I mean, you would think that pretty much any player who's not starting every game is going to be frustrated and angry and determined to prove that he should be playing, and that's quite right. I mean, I don't think necessarily that. I don't think he should be starting games necessarily ahead of some of the other guys, but at the same token, I thought he actually was pretty decent today. I think if he'd taken one of the couple of chances that he had, we'd be talking about him having a really positive game today. So, I think he's not an out. I don't think anyway he's an out and out striker. He's not that type. He brings something different. I wouldn't compare him to Defoe at all, and being one or the other to be playing. And I can maybe see why Defoe, some people would think, should be in the European squad. But I think Itten brings something a little bit different. And And I do think he'll be a useful addition to this Rangers team. I don't think he'll be starting every week, but when he's called upon, I don't think he's done anything wrong so far.
Yeah, fair point. Look, I think with the form that Kemar Roofe is showing, and we'll talk about him a little bit later on when we come to cover the Benfica game, the form that Roofe is showing and the natural kind of predatory instincts of someone like Morelos and Defoe, then Itten has a really, really difficult job to try and force his way into this side. And obviously, you know, we're scoring so many goals at the moment, and it's hard to drop any of your strikers when that's the case. Iain, we'll go from front to back. Let's have a little chat about Calvin Bassey. First goal for the club today, and you could see it kind of meant quite a lot for him. Stephen Craigan made quite a big deal of the fact that Calvin Bassey had never played first team football before, and he's only learning how to play men's football now. How impressed have you been with his first few months at the club?
I've been massively impressed by him, to be honest. I mean, I know we haven't seen a huge amount of him. He's only played a few games. But when he has played, he's looked really good, really confident. Hasn't made any major mistakes, and when he has made minor mistakes, he's recovered from them quite quickly. So he looks dangerous going forward. Defensively, he looks pretty reliable. Came in and played centre back tonight, which you might think isn't his natural position, and looked pretty confident and pretty comfortable there. So yeah, I think he has the potential to be definitely a long-term, if not a short-term success. I guess there's been a lot of speculation about Barisic and whether anyone's interested in signing him. Bassey would be the natural replacement, obviously, and at the moment you would say, well, he's still quite raw, but he has the potential there to step into those boots without any question of doubt at all. I would hope it wouldn't be that soon. Hopefully it would be the end of this season rather than halfway through this season. But I think if called upon, he'll do a great job for us. His attacking prowess is pretty impressive. And I'm glad to see he got a goal there, predatory goal as well. So yeah, I'm really impressed by him.
I mean, he has threatened to score in the past, and he does. He's certainly a different player to Borna Barisic, and again, Borna I think had a good game today and yet another wonderful free kick. So he's not the same type of player, but he has shown tenacity and getting forward, and he's good on the ball, doesn't mind a tackle, and he kind of has all of those different elements that you kind of want in a modern day fullback. So I think the future is probably very, very bright for Calvin Bassey. He's not got the easiest job trying to displace Borna Barisic, and obviously as we move into the second half of the season and the business end of these competitions, if you like, I think his game time might get a little bit more restricted when there's fewer easier games, fewer cup games against lower league opposition and the like. But I think he came in today, obviously Hollander unable to make the squad for medical reasons, as we'll come on to, but he's come in today, filled in at centre half, which is not his first position, and he's done very, very well. I think he can be very proud of his performance. Stewart, someone who's been a little bit more, let's say, mercurial this season. We discussed 3 weeks ago in the show, we discussed Yanis Hadji. And we mentioned at that time that his stats are good, his output is good in terms of the number of assists. I think he's still leading the SPFL Premiership in the number of assists this season. Yet his performances don't seem to be living up to what we've seen him do maybe in the second half of last season when he was here on loan. Would you put that down to a confidence issue, or would you suggest that perhaps we rushed into signing this guy off the back of a good game against Braga last year?
Yes and no. I think he is a young guy. He's still relatively young. He's only 22, so therefore he's still developing as a player. The type of player that he is as well, he's a bit like a winger. Wingers can probably tell you within 5 minutes of a game kicking off what kind of afternoon they're going to have. I remember Davy Cooper telling me that he'd actually moved to Motherwell and Scotland played Norway in a World Cup qualifier, and Davy went to go past the fullback, and the fullback just stuck out his leg, and deflected the ball away. And Davey said, "I knew it wasn't really going to be a great night then." And that was probably his first touch and his first attempt to take on the guy. And I think that Hadji, given what the kind of game he's got and what he tries to achieve from everything that he does, and in other words, he tries to be creative. He tries to link in with what's going on round about him. He tries to create and make and take opportunities. I think sometimes it's very difficult to be Mr. 8 out of 10 in every single game. And I think what we've actually seen is that Rangers have actually, they purchased somebody on what they've previously seen, but they also, I think, purchased the potential because there was a gap in the market or a gap in the squad for somebody who could fulfill that particular role. I think the Rangers squad has moved on and evolved maybe since then. And it means that Hadji, when he does get the chance, there's probably a tad more pressure on him to create and to bring something to the party, simply because others are doing it around him. I wouldn't be too critical. I think he, people have made all season, people have commented that look at Rangers starting 11 and then look at who they've got on the bench. You're only able to make that comment that, look at who Rangers have got in the wings waiting to come on if you actually go out and sign somebody like Hadji. So therefore, the jury might be out in some quarters about what he actually has achieved or what he might, offer up to Rangers currently. Me, I'm always, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I've actually been quite impressed, with some of the things that he's actually done. He could do more, but ultimately, I think he would still get pass marks from me.
I think one of the things we've been talking about for the last few years is that Rangers didn't have game changers. They had, some solid players who did stuff, but if we were looking for someone who could unlock a really tough defence or come on and just do something a wee bit special and change a game that was looking as if it was never going to go our way, then we didn't have anyone like that. And I think Hadji is a player like that. Like Stewart says, he doesn't maybe produce it for 90 minutes every week, every game that he plays, but that one magic moment might be enough to win a match that we're struggling to win, or win a trophy, or get through to the next round of the Europa League, for instance, as he did last season. So, I think, he's maybe a frustrating player, like that kind of creative player is, but we really needed a creative player who can do that sort of thing. And I'm hoping that he'll develop and he'll be more than just a sort of game changer, and his overall game will improve as well. But even at that, he's the kind of player we need, and we always have needed.
You see, the thing that worries me or frustrates me, Iain, is that I agree he is the kind of player who absolutely could come on and change a game. But when was the last time that he actually did? I'm not sure this season that he's actually been that player who's come on and made the difference for us.
Well, I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but you pointed out the stats earlier on where he's leading the assist table. So he's obviously doing something right. If he's creating goals, then he's helping us win games. So, in that context, it might not be the spectacular last minute free kick, but at the same time, if he's creating goals for other players, then he's doing his job. And that's what we need. We need players creating as well as players banging in the net.
Look at
can I just ask you, Ross, what you say there, about not changing games? How many times really this season have Rangers had to change matches? I wouldn't say it was very, very often. I would say that Rangers have probably been in the box seat and have probably been setting the agenda in games. Therefore, they've been ahead. Therefore, when he actually has come on, there has been less on the creative side of what he might do, and more of the option player to be the outball or to provide a certain role if he does start a match. And I think you have to look at not just his performances, but overall in the context of Rangers and how they've been performing. And if you look at it in that context, Rangers are winning, Rangers are playing well. Therefore, if he's taking his place in the starting lineup or on the bench, Steven Gerrard obviously believes that he is contributing, and that is the reason why he's in that starting squad.
I think that's a fair point, and judging by the comments here on YouTube, I think I'm probably in the minority with having this frustration. Arizona Bay here pointing out it wasn't so long ago that fans were wanting rid of Tavernier and Barisic. Peaceful Warrior Hadji has a lot in his locker. Mark Gallagher, Hadji's still settling in. He was here a couple of months in, the season ended. Borna took a year and a bit to get up to full speed. I think these are all very, very relevant points. I agree he has something that you can't put your finger on, like Peter Lovenkrands. But what frustrates me, Stuart, is that we've spent £4 million on this player who maybe he is struggling for confidence at the moment, and yes, he's young and that's fine. But if he's struggling for confidence, then I'm not sure how we could engineer a situation in which we could help him develop more confidence than we already have done. Like you say, we're in the driving seat for almost every single game we play. Today he's gone with no kind of pressure from fans in the stands because everything's behind closed doors, to a League One side, and again he never really shone, never really managed to create too much today. A couple of times made the wrong decision. So I don't know. I'm not sure at the moment that we're seeing the full potential of this guy. And one of the conclusions we kind of tentatively came to a few weeks ago was maybe the Scottish game isn't right for this player and this player isn't right for the Scottish game. Do you think there's been plenty of players that we've seen unfortunately fall into that category in the past? Do you think there's a danger that Hadji might be one of them?
It's an argument that you could make. I still think that the point I made at the outset, that the only way you're able to talk about strength and depth of this Rangers squad currently, and the fact that they have game changers on the bench or people that offer you something different on the bench, is because you've had to go out and make these signings because there was nobody in the squad like that. If you imagine Hadji is now a Rangers player, and that, say for instance, Ryan Kent is a Rangers player, a season or a bit back, Kent wasn't a Rangers player in as much as he was only on loan at the club, and Rangers went out and spent big money, and in current terms, Rangers spent big money on bringing him to the club. And I think that we might not see it, and there's a danger in Scottish football always of not actually appreciating or seeing what you have, but that Rangers can only augment the current squad or make the current squad better by signing £4 million players. I think tells you where Rangers are at in terms of their building process, and also in terms of the players that they now possess. I think they could have gone out and get another couple of loan signings a season or two back. I think now the fact that they have to go out and make that kind of signing to have it a more permanent fixture, I think says everything about how Rangers have developed under Steven Gerrard.
Well, the development under Steven Gerrard has been quite remarkable, I think, and especially when you compare that to the downward curve that the other side of the city are on. Iain, if we talk about the League Cup quarter-finals now that we go into, we get drawn away at St Mirren. It's quite remarkable, actually, that was probably maybe not the toughest, but the second or third toughest draw we could have got would have been St Mirren. And I know that we probably are not too disappointed to see that. What's your immediate reaction to the tie as that's come out today?
Well, I mean, you obviously always want a home tie for any game, even though there's no fans there. You get your own in your own comfort zone, so that's disappointing. But I mean, if we've got any ambitions to do anything at all, we should be beating St Mirren home or away. It's as simple as that. So, a tie against, say, Hibs might have been tricky. I would like to think that Rangers would go into that game against St Mirren, without any great. I mean, I'm not wanting to suggest they should be complacent at all, and I don't think they would be. But I don't think they should have anything to fear about it. I think they should go into that and win that game. And I do think that this is. I think winning a trophy will be the making of this team. I mean, we're as far as we are, and we're doing really well, successful domestically, doing really well European, but we haven't won a trophy for God knows how long, and that is always going to be sort of hanging over this current team, and until that changes, then that'll always be there. So winning a trophy is going to be mightily important, and that there won't be a better opportunity to win a trophy than there is this season, partly because of how well we're playing, and partly because of who else is left in the competition. So this is Steven Gerrard should be driving that home to the players. This is your chance. Get that first trophy, and then that will be the building blocks for the rest of the season. Personally, I think they will. I think I can't see any reason why that shouldn't happen. But the draw, probably not the easiest draw it could have been, but by no means the hardest, and definitely not something we should have any concerns about.
Well, I mean, if you
reach the last state of a competition, domestic competition, and the toughest or second toughest draw that you can get is probably St Mirren away, I think it tells you everything about the level of competition in the tournament. Absolutely. That year.
Well, that's exactly my point, Stuart. I mean, you look at the other teams involved, and it's Hibs, St Mirren, Livingston, Kilmarnock are the only teams. Sorry, not even St Mirren. Hibs, Livingston, Kilmarnock are the only teams that have given us really any bother in the last few seasons. You then got St Johnstone, St Mirren, Dunfermline, and Alloa. I mean, Stuart, is there any reason or any excuse for us not winning this trophy this year?
Yeah, complacency. And if you look at events across the East End of Glasgow tonight, you will see the net effect of how some followers of football have taken a particular result in the League Cup. That was Celtic's first defeat in a domestic cup competition for 4.5 years. Since the last defeat, which actually came under Ronnie Dyler's reign, and was when Rangers beat Celtic in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. And all Rangers had to do after winning that game was turn up at Hampden, and there would be a ceremonial presentation of the trophy, because it was only Hibs that were turning up, and Rangers were found wanting that day. And to be honest, that was a trophy and a cup final that Rangers should have won. But I honestly believe, and nothing will change my mind on it, they actually turned up thinking they'd actually won it before, or they won it as soon as Celtic missed the penalty in the semi-final. I don't see Steven Gerrard being that complacent. I think that Rangers, on two fronts, one, Rangers definitely want to win a trophy, but secondly, Rangers are in a position just now where they do not want to lose any match. They do not want to be second best in any game, and that hasn't really mattered if it's a Scottish League Cup tie or a group game, or in the Europa League, or the second leg of a Europa League tie that Rangers are already 5-0 up in after the first leg, or an away trip in the SPFL. Rangers have got a hunger about them, and part of that hunger is to preserve and maintain the run that they are currently on, and for that reason, I think that Rangers, as Iain has said, I think that Rangers will win this tie and be in the semi-finals, and it's all about them keeping their focus and doing what they do best, rather and not believing at any point in time that this is their year. All that happened at Celtic Park this afternoon was it installed Rangers as the favourites for this particular competition. It did not put red, white and blue ribbons on the trophy.
I think that's very, very well put, and I know that a lot of us were at Hampden that day back in 2016 when we did not manage to beat Hibs, and we certainly don't want a repeat of that. I mean, looking at the odds for this tournament in total, it's Rangers are at 2-1 on, so 1-2, and it's clear that the bookies are giving us a very, very strong, favourable chance of winning the trophy. And it's been a long enough wait, and yes, it's only the League Cup, and there should be bigger and better prizes to be won this season and in the seasons to come. But this is a real indicator of how far Rangers have come, the dominance that we're showing this year domestically, and it's I think today has to go down as a very, very good day indeed for us. Gents, we're going to move on and look back to Thursday night now, where we moved from the Betfred Cup to the Europa League. Thursday, we managed to go 2-0 up at home against Benfica, only to sadly concede 2 goals again late on, very reminiscent of 3 weeks ago when we went from 3-1 to 3 each over in Lisbon. Iain, putting the disappointment of the result to one side, Gerrard in his post-match interview, he mentioned that he thought that 2 each was a fair result, and he was kind of quite philosophical in his comments after the game. Putting the disappointment of the result to one side, how do you think we actually played on Thursday evening?
I thought we played well in the context of who we were playing, because Benfica, as Steven Gerrard pointed out, are a very good team. They've spent a lot of money on players during the summer. You could tell that the players that came on particularly were top class players. So given that who we were playing against, I thought we played okay. I actually thought we played better in the game in Portugal, but we were 2-0 up, and I wouldn't say we were comfortable, but things were looking pretty positive. Disappointing the way it turned out, and I think, if it's a bit of a cliche, but if you'd asked before the competition started whether we'd have been happy with 2 draws against Benfica, I think everybody would have said, yeah, definitely, especially if we were undefeated in the other 2 games. So, I'm not too downhearted. I mean, it was obviously gutting the way it panned out, because, we were, whether we should have been or shouldn't have been, we were 2-0 up and had the opportunity to get a really big scalp and basically potentially get qualified through the next round with 2 games to spare. So it was disappointing that didn't happen, but in the overall context of the game, I think a 2-2 draw with Benfica is not something to be too downhearted about. There was aspects during the game that different things that I thought, if we'd done things differently, then maybe it would have panned out in a different way. But that's for the manager to make these decisions, and and hopefully, if he thinks that he got it wrong, then he'll learn from that in the future. But it's not for me to necessarily to question him. But played okay, but disappointing not to get the win. But overall, cannot complain really. I don't think about the outcome of the match.
I agree, Iain. I think again you can make those cliches that we'd have taken a point before the game and we'd have taken 8 points at the start of the campaign, and I think those are all very valid. It doesn't necessarily soften the blow of actually conceding those 2 equalisers, and maybe it speaks to how far Rangers have come in the last 3 or 4 years to go from Pedro Caixinha standing in a bush in Luxembourg through to disappointment at only drawing against Benfica twice.
Exactly.
And that's testament to the work done by Mr. Gerrard and his staff, but that doesn't necessarily soften the blow when you're a little bit irrational and emotional on Thursday night. Stewart, that's twice that we've lost 2-goal leads against Benfica. Could you make an argument that we never learned our lesson from the away tie and kind of repeated mistakes when we played them on Thursday?
I could make that argument, but that would be rather like climbing into the boxing ring and not being able to understand how you ended up with a bloodied nose or a black eye, because the other guy isn't just going to stand there and let you hit him. He's actually going to come back and hit you every now and again. And I think Benfica are the type of club and possess the type of players who can do that. And unfortunately for Rangers, it's happened twice. Lightning did strike twice, and even if Rangers had learned from the first game against Benfica, which I actually found to be more of a disappointment given the fact that Benfica were down to 10 men, and that really should have been a game that Rangers closed out. But the Rangers, you could say, didn't learn by their mistakes. I think that's actually slightly doing an injustice to the calibre of the opposition that they were playing. Put it this way, that Benfica side, you know that there are at least one or two players in that team who will probably leave that club at the end of this season, and the price tag on them will be around 15 to 20 million quid. Absolutely guaranteed. And historically, that has been the case with Benfica over a number of years, and that was the level and the calibre of opposition that Rangers were up against. The disappointment for me is sort of almost like in two levels. The first disappointment was that Rangers had the game won and couldn't hold on. The biggest disappointment for me would be that Rangers had the game won, and had they either won in Portugal or won at Ibrox on Thursday night, it would have made life easier for them, because the remaining matches against the likes of Lech Poznan or against Standard Liège might have been like dead rubbers, because Rangers had already qualified, and therefore Steven Gerrard, other than trying to maintain the fantastic run that his club is on just now, he could have ultimately sacrificed one of those games and put out a far understrength side or a change side just to give other players a rest. And I think, again, depending on what happens in the next tie, that might not be an option going into game 6. And that's the biggest disappointment for me, that guys can't be rested and ease up on their game time.
I think that's an interesting point. I've not really considered that, Stuart, that they might have otherwise been able to use opportunities to rotate and rest. Do you think that there's, obviously, as you say, if we'd have won on Thursday night, we would right now be talking about the last 32 and who might we draw, and we would have qualified. Do you think that the disappointment of knowing that we haven't qualified yet could have a kind of psychological impact on the team, and that's something that Gerrard might have to try and work through with them?
No, I don't. I don't think there is a disappointment there not having already qualified. I think it because the tournament and the games are still very much alive and are there to be won. I think that keeps the focus and keeps Rangers grounded. I get that you might want an easier run at things. You might want an easier series of matches. But I think once you get to this stage, all you're looking for is a bit of respite and the opportunity to take it easier or to rest certain players. I mean, a couple of minutes ago, we were talking about, the likes of Bassey and who Rangers play at centre-back. I think the situation with the likes of Goldson, for instance, I think it might be that you take him out of the equation and Tavernier out of the equation and Barisic out of the equation and basically line up with a completely different back four in one of these games, just to see how it operates and just to give players the chance to make their mark without the tried and tested around them. I think from that perspective, I think that might be a trick that Rangers have missed out on. Ultimately, I think striving towards the top or the last 32 is what Rangers are ultimately interested in. I don't think it really matters who you.
I actually think we've lost Stuart again.
Is he gone again?
You're going to have to step in again, Iain.
I'll tell you what I would say is that I think there's a lot of disappointment after the game from fans immediately after the game, because we'd thrown away that win, and that's understandable. I think underlying that is that there's a little sort of, and I feel it as well, I suppose, having watched Rangers in Europe for far longer than I care to think. 40 years, I think, was 41 years ago, I think, was the first European game I went to, believe it or not. And, we've all seen sort of that things just, not going to plan, basically. And so we would all want to see it in the bag as soon as we can. And that was the opportunity for that to happen. So now there's that sort of wee bit of doubt, I suppose, with the fans that the next game could go badly, and then we've got to win the last game or whatever the scenario turns out to be. I don't think the players have that attitude. I think they're very positive. I think the management team have instilled a confidence in them that means that they will recover from that. And I was concerned after the previous game against Benfica that they might not recover, and they did. I was concerned about the game earlier in the season at Livingston, where we got a lot of criticism for the players after that, and I was worried that they might not recover from that, and they did. So I don't think it will affect the players at all. Fans are, we're a different breed. We see the negative, I suppose, in everything, but I think the players are in the right place at the moment. I don't think they'll let it knock them off. I think they'll go out and they'll probably win against Liège. And I hope I won't be held to account for those comments, but yeah, I think the players are in a different place.
I totally agree. And again, it shows the progress that this club has made on the pitch in the last few seasons. The mental strength and fortitude is something we've spoken about so many times this season. I think this is going to be a very good example of that. Iain, one of the players we haven't discussed so far, who I think is bringing some incredible value and great performances to the club, is Kemar Roofe. Obviously brought in from Anderlecht in the summer. He previously played in England with Oxford and then with Leeds, and was brought in for a reasonable fee by all accounts to challenge for a starting position up front, and he's obviously grabbed the headlines with his goal over in Liège, but another absolutely stunning strike on Thursday against Benfica, a really wonderfully executed goal. This guy to me is really showing some real value, and whether that's someone who stays with us for a number of years or someone that we move on after a year for good profit, he really seems to be delivering very well, and certainly offers us something that we don't have in our existing attackers. And the way that he holds the ball, moves the ball, brings others into play, and finishes well is making him a real threat. How impressed have you been with Roofe since he joined the club?
Yeah, he looks like a really good player, and he's obviously got good intelligence. He's technical ability obviously as well. We've seen his ability to score the spectacular goals, and he looks like he might have everything that we hoped he would have. He's obviously, I don't think, at full fitness yet. I suppose there's always that sort of. He had a setback with the injury shortly after his first couple of games. That's the only, I suppose, nagging doubt at the back of my mind is his fitness. Hopefully, he'll get back up to full fitness, because I suppose it's always difficult when players have been out for a while and then they come back in again. They're always susceptible to getting more injuries. And then at the end, they get this sort of reputation of being serial injured players. Hopefully, he'll get back to full fitness, and I think that's why he's not starting every single game. I think Gerrard is quite sensibly sort of bringing him in gradually and building him up in terms of his fitness levels. And I think that's a sensible thing to do. But on the surface of it, it looks as if he's got all the attributes we're looking for, and definitely, he's a different kind of player to Morelos. I thought he would have been an alternative to Morelos. It might well be that the two of them, as we've seen in games, will play together, and that is great. Because that was the biggest problem we had with Morelos last season, was when he went off the boil with nothing else, and now we're in a situation where we've got Roofe, potentially Iain, and Defoe as well in the sort of domestic games. So yeah, he definitely looks, and I don't know whether he's a long-term player for us or not. I mean, you never know how these things will work out. If he was signed with a view to getting a good fee for him in return after a year, then that's the way it is. As long as he does the business, if he's valuable at the end of that period of time, then he must have done something special for us while he was here. So I'm all in favour of that.
I think you're absolutely right, Iain. It's been actually a pleasant surprise to see Roofe and Morelos playing together and playing so well together. He does just bring another dimension, and times on Thursday he just looked to be a cut above some of the other players that we have. He's just a different level. So I think you have to again give praise to the recruitment team, the scouting team, who have identified him and the powers that be at the club for managing to bring him on board. I can't imagine he's a cheap player to have prized away from Anderlecht. So very, very, very happy with the return that we're getting from him so far. I'm just going to sort of say now, we are getting some rumours on the comments here on YouTube that Lennon has been sacked from Celtic. We will try and corroborate that before the end of the show. We've only got about 10 minutes left, so we will be sort of frantically Googling and texting folk to see if that's correct. But we're no sure at the moment. Just hold on with us, and we'll try and get that corroborated.
I've got to say, if that is the case, while it shouldn't really matter what's going on with them, I'd be disappointed because I said months ago that I felt that I couldn't believe that he got the job, to be quite honest, because I don't think his record really stands up to much scrutiny really when you sort of start analysing it, and I thought that he would be a major weak link for Celtic, and I didn't think that under him that they would be very successful, and it was certainly turning out that way. Certainly, they do seem to be imploding. So I would be disappointed if that is the case. I think he should be given a fair run at it. I mean, it's terrible getting rid of somebody at this time of year, right before Christmas.
Absolutely. I agree. The thing is, like I said at the top of the show, we're a Rangers podcast. We're here to talk about Rangers, but this does affect us.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's hugely relevant in what is a very, very important title race this year. It's hugely relevant to know what our rivals are up to. I mean, if you're the manager of Rangers, Iain, what do you do to try and ensure that your squad can capitalise on the kind of disharmony that's going on in the East End?
Well, I think what is more important is that we just carry on doing what we've been doing, because we're now in that position that we can only throw it away. If we're ahead, there's a bit of daylight between us and Celtic and domestically, so we're in the position that if we just carry on doing what we're doing, then we win the league, and that is exactly what I'm sure Gerrard will be telling the players if they even discuss it, is that just carry on doing what you're doing and just keep winning games and playing at the levels that we've been playing. As long as we keep doing that, then the pressure is on them, because I mean, let's be honest, they are absolutely obsessed with this 10 in a row thing that nobody else really cares about. So that's what's driving all the anger and the fury and all the rest of it. So no matter who's in charge, if we're still in a strong position, come sort of springtime, then the pressure will be ratcheted up even more. So it's just a case of just keeping going, basically.
And that's sort of very consistent, Iain, with the message that we're getting from Gerrard and from his players. Is I'm actually quite impressed to see how well drilled they all are in saying, we focus on ourselves, we take this one game at a time, we know we don't let our standards slip, we've learned our lessons from the last couple of seasons. It seems that there's been a real concerted effort amongst the staff of the club to make sure everyone's on the same page, that there's a consistent message being given, and that we don't let a lack of professionalism or any complacency start to seep in. I've been doing some fervent Googling to try and find out if that rumour is correct. As far as I can see, it's there's been a few spoof Twitter accounts that are trying to make themselves look like reputable news sources that are saying that he's gone. At the moment, we can't find anything confirming it or anything with kind of accuracy or validity behind it to say that he has gone. So it doesn't seem to be the case at the moment, but I mean, it does seem like it's only a matter of time.
You'd have to say you'd be astonished if it didn't happen, because the reaction tonight, I can't see how the Celtic board could stand against that, to be honest. I mean, they might well take the view that we're not going to be forced over by mob rule or whatever, but in the context of 2 wins in 10 games, then I'd be amazed if they don't decide to get rid of it, and especially as the board as well, I'm sure, are absolutely terrified that they don't get the 10 in a row as well. So I think his days are numbered.
Yep, absolutely agreed. And that 10 in a row or 9.5 in a row seems to have real significance to them. So yeah, interesting few days ahead. And like I say, we're here to talk about Rangers, but this stuff really does affect us. Stuart, I can see that your name's popped back up in the screen. Have you managed to rejoin us for the last few minutes?
I think the tide has come back in. Just like to thank BT for their intermittent services. You either end up sounding like Norman Collier, that's one for the teenagers out there, or it doesn't work at all. The last time I had problems like this, they not only sent me one new hub, they sent me 3 hubs, and then we found out that somebody in the Stonehouse area had basically just cut a large patch out of the actual exchange. Therefore, it wouldn't have mattered how many they sent me. I'm just wondering if the same engineers have been at play this time again. But anyway, I do apologise to everyone. I'm sure some might celebrate not hearing me, but I was enjoying myself.
We're very, very pleased to have you back for the last few minutes of the show. Stuart, we'll kind of actually got to the last question that we had slated here, so I'll direct it to yourself. We got the sort of unfortunate news today that Philip Hollander has tested positive for COVID-19, and it's the first team player that we seem to have had that's been announced to have been tested positive. Do you have any worry that this leaves us a little bit short-staffed at the centre half position? Obviously, we don't seem to have George Edmondson available for selection, or we certainly will be without him for a number of games due to his COVID lockdown breaches. So does that give you any concern that we're maybe a little bit short on numbers at the back?
Yeah, to be honest, Hollander, to my mind, it's almost like an occupational hazard just now, that given your proximity to other human beings and playing professional sport, there's a chance that you might come down with COVID or test positive for COVID. And to that end, I think it's that Edmondson's situation is compounded now by his own stupidity. I think you saw that Rangers had played with Bassey at centre back. I think that probably is Steven Gerrard testing his options already. And to be honest, I think that Rangers might be adequately covered in that particular position.
Do you think, Stuart, there's been claims that Rangers have kind of been getting away with it so far? We've certainly seen other teams in Scotland, not least Celtic, have had real problems with COVID, and it's left them, in difficult situations trying to field teams. And I think I'm right in saying St Mirren and Kilmarnock have both had a number of games postponed for, just because of the sheer number of players that they've had out through positive COVID tests. Do you think that Rangers have kind of got lucky so far with the minimal impact that we've had from this virus?
I think they've got lucky in as much as Edmondson and Jones were kind of headed off at the pass ever so slightly. Like, you just don't know how close you have been to whether you've dodged a bullet or whether you've been close to a bullet actually hitting you. And I go back to my point. I think it's an occupational hazard in terms of playing professional sport just now and mixing with others in the very nature of the sport you're participating in, that there's a possibility that people will come down with COVID. No, I think the authorities need to be understanding in these situations, and they need to look at guys that actually go out and break the protocols. They're deserving of whatever punishment comes their way. But I do think at times that the games being postponed and the likes has been necessary, and I would actually say that others might have been in a similar situation, have been less fortunate and not had their games called off. In terms of Rangers and what Rangers are doing, they must be doing something right, given that the numbers have been so few. Touch wood.
I suppose the worry is that, once you've had one, you worry that, obviously Hillander's mixing with all the other players who'd have been training with them and so on. So I suppose your concern is that, where's he picked it up from, or who's he passed it on to, and so on. So, I mean, yeah, we've been lucky so far. It was inevitable we were going to have a case, and you just hope that it isn't going to affect a lot of players in the squad, and that has some effect on the team that we can put out. But fingers crossed on that front.
No, you're right. We always knew at some point we would start seeing this, and the players would be testing positive. And I think the point of that question, in my opinion, Rangers haven't been lucky. Rangers have put in protocols and procedures to ensure that they can keep their staff safe, and those have by and large, they seem to have worked. The rumour is that Hillander picked it up because his wife picked it up when she was working. So, if that's the case, there's only so much that Rangers can control, and if Rangers can control everything that they can control, which they appear to have done, they'll try and keep a lid on this as much as possible and keep their staff safe. That's not to say that other clubs haven't done that, but maybe other clubs, have been less fortunate than Rangers have. But that doesn't mean that we've been lucky. That means that we've designed systems and protocols to keep secure, and I'm glad to see that that's the case, and that we have kind of reaped the benefits of that by having a fit and healthy squad available for selection, and we're making the most of that. As we say, look, this virus has been kicking around now in this country for 8 or 9 months or so, and whilst we're kind of look like we're heading towards a vaccine, and that hopefully in the coming months we'll all be back in the stadiums and we won't need to worry about this anymore. There still will be quite a long road ahead, and we will get more positive tests. We will get more players out missing. We have to hope that it doesn't kind of go on a rampage through the squad, because the position that we're in at the moment is incredibly promising in the league and in all cups. Still in Europe, looking all accounts look like we'll qualify out of that tough group in Europe. Doing very well in the League Cup, doing very, very well in the league. But it's all quite a precarious position, because if we do get a series of positive tests coming through the squad, that could really, really harm the chances in all those competitions. And I think that Rangers need to take some credit for the systems and protocols that they've clearly put in place to try and minimise the impact of COVID, and it seems to be paying off, like I say. Gents, I think we've just tipped over the hour mark, and that's probably a good place to call it quits for today. As I say, some incredible scenes coming from the East End of Glasgow, which, given the lockdown situation, we're certainly not happy to see. But please do keep yourselves tuned into www.gersnet.co.uk for all of the breaking news in Scottish football. And if there is a change in management over at Celtic Park, then, well, let's see what that means for Rangers going forward this season. There's certainly two schools of thought that it could be either very, very good or a very, very bad thing for us if Lennon is replaced. So we'll just have to keep a close eye on that and see where we end up. Obviously, I'd like to thank both Iain and Stewart for giving up their valuable time on Sunday evening to come and chat with us, even if Stewart was kind of dropping in and out. It was certainly still some very, very valuable insights, so thank you very much for that. As always, the show will be back next Sunday from 9:30 p.m, where we will be talking over the game against Liège and Rangers returning to league action. Please do head over to the website to check out all of the latest news. Join the friendly discussion forum where you can find myself, Stewart and Iain as well, and get involved in the chat. As we're saying every week, guys, please do stay safe. Please don't turn out at the stadium and protest and throw stuff at the police. It's simply not worth it. Please stay safe. Please look after each other.